Hello. The title of this podcast is Will You Choose Peace or Double Down on Suffering? That's an interesting question. So I invite you to take a look at whatever's bothering you, whatever you're resisting, what's disturbing you, whatever's hitting your stuff internally, what's causing you stress, anxiety, or being mired and obsessive thinking. And ask yourself, are you going to choose the road that leads to peace, or are you going to double down on suffering? And the first step in, I guess, answering that question is to take a moment to be aware that there is even a choice available to you, because there is. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care what it is. You have a choice. We've seen people be faced with some daunting, overwhelming challenges. They're overwhelming and daunting to the personal self, the personal mind, to the ego, but to the conscious self, that part of you that's right back here, that's in charge. If you are aware of it, that is in charge of how you experience life. And we know that because we've seen examples of people, as I mentioned before, that can be in situations that they seem not to be bothered. And it's not that they're not taking action or they are indifferent to life or the situation. No, they're present to it. They are just aware of the things that they can control. They don't suppress things or act as if things haven't happened, or if there aren't challenges. They're present to the challenges, but again, also aware of what part of it that they have control over. And what they all say is that they have a choice on how they respond to the challenges, which points to what their experience is internally. That's the part that they have control over. So for me, that anything that has challenged me, when I wasn't mindful of this, what I'm clear on is that I unconsciously doubled down on suffering. How would I know this? Because I didn't do anything to stop myself from being mired down in obsessive thinking. I didn't practice gratitude on a regular basis. I didn't use a practice that helped me detach from my mind and the ruminations and that line of thinking that was causing me suffering. I didn't do that. I was reactive as opposed to being responsive, taking intelligent action, thoughtful action, asking myself, is what I'm doing helping me to experience more peace? Or is it hurting me, causing me to experience more suffering? I've had a few friends who have experienced, and I have too, relationships that have come to an end. And in some cases, the relationships with my friends, it wasn't what they asked for. So they could have easily gone down the path of, I got to fight this, resist it, be upset with their significant others, with their significant other. They could have done that, which would have been doubling down on suffering, or they could have taken a moment to accept it. If there was action to take to repair the relationship, to restore it, take that action peacefully. And if there's not, to celebrate the aspects of it that were a good run, to learn from all the experiences that now make up some really positive lessons for how to go into the next relationship. That's one of the things that they could have done, which was choosing peace. Or they could have been negative about the relationship when they communicate about with others. If there were children involved, talk very negatively about their former significant other to the children. When they think of the person, the thing that comes to mind are negative aspects of that experience. That is doubling down on the suffering. If you come into a job in which you don't feel valued, you feel like you've been wronged, you don't feel a sense of belonging, one way is to, if you want to experience more peace and joy, is to see whether or not there are activities at that particular job that you can become engaged in. Or You can start to organize some. I'm very fortunate to have two areas of my life that in which I work: ToBeRe, which is amazing, Mayo Clinic, which is amazing, and there are a ton of activities that take place at both that foster this sense of community that are aligned with being peaceful, loving. Now, the old me, when I was doubling down on suffering, would not have even considered engaging in any of those activities. And I would have come in with one purpose. What am I getting out of this? From ToBeRe, if I wasn't, the founder of ToBeRe, and because I cared about other people winning, it meant that I had to change and grow. If I wasn't that person, then I would have taken a place like ToBeRe in a community like it, and I just want to work out. That's all I want to do. I want to work out, come in, get those gains. And no, I don't want to work out with somebody who is I don't think is at the same fitness level or inspiring. I don't want, like, I would have doubled down on the suffering. I would have came in with about what I needed, as opposed to what I can give, what I can contribute. Mayo Clinic is amazing at doing things that make employees feel valued, feel like there's a sense of belonging. However, if you're a person who is running a narrative that there is no belonging here, I don't feel included, I don't feel seen, I don't feel valued, then you'll find evidence to support that. And I certainly did that in Marine Corps. I did that when I lived in Yuma. And I did that at other, in other experiences in my life. And then I stopped doing that. And when I stopped doing that, what I saw was an amazing country that I live in, because I stopped doubling down on suffering. I said, me being preoccupied with this narrative, is if it's the only narrative out there, it's only causing me suffering. Why don't I consider that there's a whole another way to see this experience that's right in front of me? Say the country. We live in an amazing country with national parks that are open to everybody, that you can go to. Not just national parks, but they're public parks. Even if they're not in your neighborhood, the beautiful parks, you can go somewhere else if it's a public park and experience it. At Mayo Clinic, I mean, you walk into the building and it's amazing, and there has been no expense spared to create this wonderful work environment for colleagues to care for patients and to do their work in the service of that higher calling of patients. It's amazing, and the people you get to work with and the resources. And the organization goes beyond that with creating opportunities for people to get together with each other, as well as with their families, to be invited to. And even in the space of that, people will choose suffering. Give you a great example. My friend Julie. Most recently, we had an event, Zoo Lights. And my dear friend had her two grandkids with her and their parents, and they came to do Zoo Lights. Was the parking ideal? It was not. But she understood that that's something that she was not going to allow herself to experience suffering over. So she accepted that the parking wasn't ideal, but she accepted the reality of it. And she had a fantastic time with her family there. My friend Sina got there and said, Keith, the parking was left a lot to be desired, but we made the most of it. We had our walk on. I had my heater vest on. Every step I took, I was talking to the kids about how warm it was, and it's getting too warm. Let me turn it down. She had this great shared experience with the kids taking the walk from the overflow parking lot all the way into the zoo. And then once she got in, it was very crowded, but she made the most of that with her kids. And she found the hot chocolate for them and, all the other treats and just all those things that she chose to see the good in the experience. She chose to see the expense and the intentionality of what the organization was trying to do for the employees. Now, there are other people that came back and they were bothered by it. That's called doubling down on suffering. Most recently today, there was a cancellation of flights. And before that, with the holidays, one of the major airlines did a lot of cancellations too. Now, if you're in that, you're like, well, that shouldn't happen, but it did happen. And so your resistance to it is doubling down on suffering. But in the moment of that, you say to yourself, flights get canceled, delayed all the time. I want to be the kind of person who can handle that. So I'll bring work with me. I'll bring board games. I'll bring something to help me pass the time. And that is one way to choose peace as opposed to suffering. Another example is when you become attached to outcome, that it has to be a certain way. We have to score. We're on this project, it has to produce this result. Well, that's one way to define what's going to bring you joy, but it's very limiting. Another way is to say, I don't know what's going to happen along the way. I don't know if we're going to have the outcome that we hope to have or not. But here's what I do know. I'm going to have a great experience along the way. That's the parts you have control over. And that's called choosing peace as opposed to doubling down on suffering. So I ask you, with whatever's going on in your life, will you choose peace or will you do what most people do? And that's double down on suffering. The choice is yours.